In Unit 7, we're going to cover sexual harassment, cybersecurity. We're going to talk about the Deceptive Trade Practices Act, the lemon law, how you're going to be able to easily charge documentary fees for additional profits if that's something you want to do. We're going to go over advertising regulations, and then we'll talk about what can be the very lucrative export market where you might be selling your vehicles to persons in other countries. So first of all, I want to start with sexual harassment. Sexual harassment in the workplace remains a persistent problem. About 1/3 of approximately 90,000 charges received by the Federal Equal Opportunity Commission included an allegation of workplace harassment. And this included, among other things, charges of unlawful harassment on the basis of sex, including sexual identity, gender identity, pregnancy. It included race, disability, age, ethnicity, national origin, color, and religion. Workplace harassment too often goes unreported. Common workplace-based responses by those who experience sex-based harassment are to avoid the harasser, deny or downplay the gravity of the situation, or attempt to ignore, forget, or endure the behavior. The least common response to harassment is to take some formal action, either to report the harassment internally or file a formal legal complaint. Roughly 3 out of 4 individuals who experience harassment never even talk to a supervisor or manager about the harassing conduct. Employees who experience harassment fail to report the harassing behavior or file a complaint because sometimes they fear disbelief of their claim, inaction of their claim, blame, or social or professional retaliation. It is imperative that we prevent sexual harassment. I want to repeat that. It is imperative that a dealer prevents sexual harassment in the workplace. When a dealership owner considers the cost of workplace harassment, they often focus on legal costs, and with good reason. Last year, the Federal Equal Opportunity Commission alone recovered $164.5 million for workers alleging harassment. And these are just direct costs on top of the tip of the iceberg. Workplace harassment, first and foremost, comes at a steep cost to those who suffer it as they experience mental, physical, and economic harm. So we have to prevent harassment. Beyond that, workers' harassment affects all workers, and its true cost includes decreased productivity, increased turnover, and reputational harm. Stopping workplace harassment starts at the top with you. You're the owner. Leadership and accountability are critical. Workplace culture has the greatest impact on allowing harassment to flourish, or the opposite, in preventing harassment. The importance of leadership cannot be overstated. Effective harassment prevention efforts and workplace culture in which harassment is not tolerated must start with and involve the highest level of management of the dealership. But a commitment, even from the top, to a diverse, inclusive, and respectful workplace is not enough. Rather, at all levels, across all positions, a dealership must have systems in place that hold employees accountable for this expectation. Accountability systems must ensure that those who engage in harassment are held responsible in a meaningful, appropriate, and proportional manner, and those whose job it is to prevent or respond to harassment should be rewarding for doing that job well, or they should be penalized for failing to do that job well. Finally, leadership means ensuring that anti-harassment efforts are given the necessary time and resources to be effective. You know, when we're talking about sexual harassment, training must change. Much of the training done over the last 30 years has not worked as a prevention tool. It's been too focused on simply avoiding legal liability. Effective training can reduce workplace harassment and recognize that ineffective training can be unhelpful or counterproductive. Training is most effective when it's tailored to the specific workplace and to different types of employees. When trained correctly, your general manager or your sales manager in particular can be a dealership's most valuable resource in preventing and stopping harassment. So new and different approaches to training have to be explored. New models of training show promise for harassment training. So they have what's called bystander intervention training, which is increasingly used to combat sexual violence, and it empowers coworkers and gives them the tools to intervene when they witness harassing behavior, and may show promise for harassment prevention as well. Workplace civility training that does not focus on eliminating unwelcome or offensive behavior based on characteristics protected under unemployment non-discrimination laws, but rather on promoting respect and civility in the workplace, generally, likewise, may offer solutions. Harassment in the workplace will not stop on its own. It is your responsibility to stop workplace harassment. We cannot be complacent bystanders and expect our dealerships' cultures to change themselves. For this reason, we need to suggest exploring the launch of something that's like an It's On Us campaign for the workplace, which I want to talk about. Originally developed to reduce sexual violence in educational settings, the It's On Us campaign has been used on many campuses throughout the United States, and it's allowed staff to be empowered to be part of the solution of sexual assault and should be provided all the tools necessary to prevent sexual assault by engaged bystanders. So if you launch something similar to an It's On Us campaign in your workplace, you're going to see an audacious goal. But doing so can transform the problem of workplace harassment from being about targets, harassers, and legal compliance into one in which coworkers, supervisors, clients, and customers will all have a role in stopping such harassment. Preventing harassment begins with leadership. What step can a dealer's leadership take to ensure that a dealership culture reflects the leadership values of not tolerating harassment and promoting civility and respect? First, you, as the leader of your dealership, you're going to need to establish a sense of urgency about preventing harassment in your dealership. You're going to need to take a visible role in stating the importance of having a dealership that is free of harassment. Be sure your employees know specific behaviors that are never acceptable in the dealership. One way to communicate a sense of urgency is to conduct a survey of employees to determine whether employees feel that harassment exists in your dealership and whether that harassment is tolerated. You could start with a survey with a document with as simple as like 10 questions on topics such as if the employee has experienced harassment, if the employee has witnessed harassment in your dealership, and ask the employee if they're aware of how to report harassment, because that's a very, very important component in any type of harassment policy, is showing the employee how to report harassment they have experienced or they have witnessed. It's recommended to conduct more than one survey, and always ensure your employees' responses are completely confidential, or you might even want to conduct surveys with responders remaining completely anonymous. A dealership must have effective policies on sexual harassment, procedures for reporting sexual harassment, and must conduct effective trainings on those policies and those procedures. Anti-harassment policies must be communicated clearly to all dealership employees, and reporting systems must be implemented consistently. It is imperative that all training ensures that dealership employees are aware of how to report harassment. Accountability. Accountability must be demonstrated at all times. A dealership that has an effective anti-harassment program, including an effective reporting system, a thorough workplace investigation system, which sometimes may include an out-of-house professional investigator, and appropriate corrective actions, and communicates these policies to dealership employees, shows the dealership does take harassment very seriously. This in turn means that more dealership employees will be likely to complain if they experience harassment or report harassment they observe, so that the dealership may deal with such incidents more effectively. This creates a positive sense that can ultimately reduce the amount of harassment that occurs in a dealership. Accountability also means employees of the dealership must be held accountable for their actions. General managers and sales managers must be held responsible for monitoring and stopping harassment by the dealership employees that they supervise and they manage. Our policies also have to have reporting procedures, investigations, and corrective actions. They are essential components to any dealership that is providing a sexual harassment training program. Any effective dealership sexual harassment program begins with an anti-harassment policy. It is imperative that this harassment policy is in writing. A dealership needs a stated policy against harassment that describes the behaviors that will not be tolerated in the dealership and the procedures to follow in reporting and responding to harassment. Employees in workplaces without policies report the highest levels of sexual harassment. Dealerships should adopt a robust anti-harassment policy, regularly train each employee on its contents, and vigorously follow and enforce the policy. The dealership anti-harassment policy should include a clear explanation of prohibited conduct, including examples, clear assurance that the employees who make complaints or provide information related to complaints, witnesses, or others who participate in the investigation will be protected against any type of retaliation. A clearly described complaint process that provides multiple accessible avenues of complaint, and an assurance that the employer will protect the confidentiality of harassment complaints to all the extent possible. So a complaint process has to provide a prompt, thorough, and impartial investigation. And you also need to ensure that the dealership will take immediate corrective action when it determines that harassment has occurred and respond appropriately to behavior which may not be legally defined as harassment, but which, left unchecked, could lead to harassment. A dealership's policy should be written in clear, simple words and in all languages that are used in the dealership. So if you have several Spanish-speaking employees, make sure you have a Spanish policy in writing. Maybe you've got Japanese employees. You make sure that you've got something written in Japanese. The words of the policy itself should be simple and very easy to understand for each one of the dealership employees. Similarly, an effective policy should make clear that harassment on the basis of any protected characteristic will absolutely not be tolerated. It is not acceptable to just have a written policy. The policy must be communicated on a regular basis to every dealership employee, particularly information about how to file a complaint or how to report harassment that one observes, and how an employee who files a complaint or an employee who reports harassment or participates in the investigation of alleged harassment will be protected from any type of retaliation. Harassment via social media. Many people use social media to attack and harass others, so it is crucial that a dealership include social media when drafting harassment policies. Any anti-harassment policy should make it clear that harassment on social media carries the same exact weight as harassment in the dealership workplace. Owners, general managers, and sales managers with anti-harassment responsibilities should be wary of their social media connections with all employees. You must remember that social media platforms are potential vehicles for workplace-related harassment, and social media must be included in any type of dealership harassment policy. Reporting systems. Effective reporting systems for allegations of harassment are among the most critical elements of any dealership's anti-harassment effort. A proper reporting system must easily allow a person that has experienced harassment to report the harassment, and often offers a means to which a dealership employee that has witnessed harassment may report those incidents as well. Reporting systems must include a choice of reporting avenues along with more than one complaint handler. In other words, you should offer employees several different ways to report harassment and have multiple persons at the dealership that the employee may report harassment to. You may, for example, have a special link on your website, have a special email address such as harassment@abcmotors.com, a multilingual harassment phone number possibly, and a readily available paper form that can be completed to report harassment incidents as well. You should have more than one person to report to as well, preferably with separate genders. A person reporting harassment may feel much more comfortable reporting the harassment incident to someone of the same gender. So if you can have two different genders, a couple of different genders to report to, that is definitely going to be an advantage in your reporting system. An effective and easy to use reporting system also communicates to employees that the dealership's commitment to the practices it's set forth in its anti-harassment policy is basically written in stone. Investigations. Your reporting system must provide timely responses and investigations. Dealership harassment investigations should be kept as confidential as possible. Dealership employees must feel safe to express their views without any fear of retribution or retaliation. The privacy of both the accuser and the accused should be protected to the greatest extent possible. Investigators should document all steps taken from the first point of contact, prepare a written report, and communicate the results to all relevant parties, including you, the principal owner. It is then necessary to take corrective actions to ensure that harassment never occurs again. Compliance training. Regular training of general managers, salespersons, parts and repair employees, and all employees of the dealership is highly recommended. You should develop training methods that are geared to different levels of the dealership. For example, you should have one training course designed for managers and supervisors, and another training course that is designed for all dealership employees. So let's talk about this. Compliance training for all employees would basically describe illegal harassment and conduct that, if left unchecked, might rise to the level of illegal harassment. It should also include examples that are tailored to the dealership industry. It must educate employees about their rights and their responsibilities if they experience conduct that is not acceptable in your dealership. It must describe in simple terms the process for reporting harassment that is explained or observed or experienced, and explains the consequences of engaging in conduct that's unacceptable to the dealership. So you'll need to have one compliance training program for all the dealers and the dealership employees, but you will also need to make sure that you have a separate compliance training that is geared just for management. So compliance training for management must include easy to understand and realistic methods for dealing with harassment that they observe, that is reported to them, or which they have knowledge or information, including a description of the sanctions for failing to use such methods. It must also provide clear instructions on how to report harassing behavior up the chain of command to you, one of the principal owners. The training must encourage managers and supervisors to practice situational awareness and assess the workforce within their responsibility for risk factors of harassment. Always remember to include the disciplinary actions for anyone that fails to properly report harassment they have been notified of, or any harassment that they may have witnessed. So don't ever forget to actually put the disciplinary actions in your policy, and that must be included in your compliance training. I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about cybersecurity. So, protecting your customer's digital footprint is going to be absolutely imperative for the operation of any dealership. So you always want to make sure that you've got updated security software, whether you're using maybe McAfee or Norton or Windows Defender or something like that. You want to make sure that you always got the most updated security software. Always turn on automatic software updates, even with just your operating system. Maybe you're using a Mac, maybe you're using a PC. Make sure that you have automatic updates to all your software. That's going to have fixes to security breaches as well. You want to make sure and protect and scan external devices as well. So we're not just thinking about PCs here or Macs. We're looking at hard drives, external hard drives, and even flash drives. You want to make sure that they're all secure. So you want to also safeguard all devices that are connected to the internet. So you might be thinking only of your computer, but we have wireless printers and several other devices that can actually have access to the internet. So you want to make sure and safeguard all devices in your dealership that have access to the internet. You want to limit your Wi-Fi hotspots, and it's absolutely crucial, as I said a couple of times here today, to secure your router. And no matter where you get your router from, you want to change your default passwords on your router. And you also want to make sure that you have any type of security updates on that router as well. Now, when you're getting emails, and we're going to talk about email phishing here in just a little bit, you want to really be aware of unknown emails, especially ones that look like they come from a familiar source. So we're going to talk about a little bit more extensively about email phishing here in just a little bit. It's crucial that you do regular data backups. You're going to be required to store a minimum amount of records. And so, if you don't have your records backed up properly, you could not have your records, and then you wouldn't be compliant with state record laws. So make sure, no matter what, if you've got everything on one computer, we'll make sure and back that computer up. Record backup is absolutely mandatory. And you always want to use really strong passwords at all times. So changing your password is going to be crucial as well. And obviously you want to limit information that you share online. You have to educate your dealership employees on security, on cybersecurity, because, you could have an employee that leaves a laptop maybe at a dealer auction or something like that, and you could be liable for the information that is on that. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit as well. So if you do have sensitive information, obviously you want to store it in a locked room. You don't want to leave this information floating around the dealership to where even, say, an employee or maybe even a customer can come across that, and only allow sensitive data to those who need it the most. So that could be you, that could be, maybe a sales manager or general manager. You want to definitely limit sensitive data to the employees that need it the most. And always remind your employees to protect their sensitive data. So, if they've got a flash drive or something like that, they want to make sure that they're not carrying that off the dealership, that has all your records on it. And always keep track of who has access to all of your sensitive data. I would like to discuss with you secure website hosting. If you don't have the skills to set up the web presence that you want for your dealership, then you might have to find a web host provider to do that for you. Whether you're upgrading your current website or maybe you're launching a new website, there are many web hosting options. When comparing services, security has to be your top priority. Be sure your website provider can provide the following. TLS, as we discussed a little bit earlier, that's the upgraded SSL certificates. This service you choose should include TLS, which will help you protect your customers' privacy as well. And as we discussed earlier, you've heard of that earlier version, which was called SSL. TLS helps make sure that your customer gets to your real website when they type your URL into the address bar. When TLS is correctly implemented, your website should always begin with HTTPS. TLS also helps make sure the information you send to your website is encrypted, and that's especially important if you ask customers for sensitive information like credit cards or passwords or possibly a loan application. Many web host providers offer pre-built websites or software packages designed to make it quick and easy to set up your dealership website. As with any software, it's essential that you use the latest versions with the most up-to-date security patches. Make sure you know how to keep the website software up to date, whether the web host provider is doing this for you or if you're going to manage that information on your own. If a web host provider is managing your website, you might have to go to that provider to make any changes, though you may be able to log in and make some changes yourself. Some web host providers may instead offer you the option of managing the website on your own. And it's important to clarify from the very beginning who will manage this website after it is built. Secure remote access is also extremely important, so you want to make sure employees and vendors may need to connect to your network remotely. Put your network security first. Make employees and vendors follow strong security standards before they ever connect to your network. Give them the tools to make security part of the work routine. So how do you protect devices? Well, whether employees or vendors use company-issued devices or their own when connecting remotely to your network, those devices should be secure. So make sure and follow these steps and make sure your employers and vendors do the same thing. Always change preset router passwords and the default name of your router. Keep the router software up to date. You may have to visit the router's website often to do this, so always keep your router up to date. Consider enabling full disk encryption for laptops and other mobile devices that you connect to remotely from your network. This could be a dealership taking a laptop to a dealer auction, an employee. Check your operating system for this option, which will protect any data stored on the device if it's lost or stolen. This is especially important if the device stores any sensitive personal information. Always change smartphone settings to stop automatic connections to public Wi-Fi. Keep up-to-date antivirus protection on all devices that connect to the network and the internet, including mobile devices. How do you connect remotely to the internet requires employees and vendors to use secure connections when they do connect remotely to your network. So you want to make sure that they're always using a router with WPA2 or WPA3. These are the latest technology updates that has encryption that are connected on these devices from someone from their home. Encryption protects information sent over a network so outsiders can't read it, and only encrypted messages are actually sent over the information. Only use public Wi-Fi when also using a virtual private network to encrypt traffic between their computers and the internet. Public Wi-Fi does not provide secure internet connections on its own. Your employees can get a personal VPN account from your VPN service provider, or you may want to hire a vendor to create an enterprise VPN for all of your employees to use. What do you do to maintain security? Well, number one, you want to train your staff. Always include information on secure remote access in regular trainings and new staff orientations. Have policies that cover the basic cybersecurity operations, give copies to your employees, and explain the importance of following these rules. Before letting any device, whether it's an employee's home or vendor network, connect to your network, make sure it meets your network's security requirements. Tell all dealership staff about the risks of using public Wi-Fi, especially when they're at a dealer auction. So that's something that they want to definitely be aware of. I also want to talk to you about tech support scams. So sometimes you might get a phone call, a pop-up, or an email telling you there's a problem with your computer. Sometimes scammers are behind these calls, pop-up messages, and emails. They want to get your money, they want to get your personal information or access to your files. And this can harm your network. It can put your dealership reputation at risk. It can put your data at risk and damage your business. How the scam works. So sometimes a scammer might pretend to be from a well-known tech company. They might say they're from Microsoft, and they're going to use a lot of technical terms to convince you that the problems with your computer are real. They may ask you to open some files or to run a scan on your computer, and they're going to tell you that some files or the scan results shows that there's a problem, but there actually isn't one. So how do you protect your business? If a caller says your computer has a problem, just hang up. A tech support call you don't even expect is a scam, even if the number is local or looks legitimate. These scammers use fake caller ID information to look like they're from local businesses or trusted companies. If you get a pop-up message to call tech support, just ignore it. Some pop-up messages about computer issues are legitimate, but do not call a number or click a link that appears on a pop-up message warning you of a computer problem. If you're worried about a virus or other threat, call your security software company directly using the phone number only on its website, or maybe on a sales receipt or the product packaging, or consult a trusted security professional. Never, ever give someone your password, and don't ever allow remote access to your dealership computer to someone who contacts you unexpectedly. What to do if you were scammed? If you shared your password with a scammer, or one of your employees has done this, change your account on every account that uses that password. And always remember to use unique passwords for each account and each service. Consider using a password manager. Get rid of all malware. Update or download legitimate security software, and always make sure you scan your computer and delete anything that software says is a problem. If you need help, always consult a trusted security professional. If the affected computer is connected to your network, or your security professional says you should check the entire network for intrusions, you should definitely heed those instructions. If you bought bogus services, ask your credit card company to reverse the charges and check your statement for any charges that you did not approve. Keep checking your credit card statements to make sure the scammer doesn't try to recharge you every single month. Also, report that attack right away to the Federal Trade Commission. Vendor security is also very important. Our business vendors may have access to a lot of sensitive information, and these are software texts and things like that. And so make sure your vendors are securing their own computers and their networks. For example, if, let's say, your accountant who has all your financial data loses his or her laptop, or a vendor whose network is connected to yours gets hacked, the result, your business data and your customers' personal information may end up in the wrong hands, putting your business and your customers at risk. What do you do if you have a security breach? Well, number one, you need to contact the authorities. You need to report the attack right away to your local police department. And if they're not familiar with investigating information compromises, then you should contact your local FBI office. This is serious stuff you don't want to overlook. Confirm the vendor has a fix. Make sure the vendor fixes the vulnerabilities and ensures that your information will be safe going forward. If your business decides to continue to use that same vendor, always notify your customers. If your data or personal information was compromised, make sure you notify the affected parties. This is the law, by the way, and they could be at risk for identity theft. Something you might also take a look at to protect your dealership is cyber insurance. Recovering from a cyber attack can be very, very costly. And cyber insurance is one option that can help protect your business against losses resulting from a cyber attack. If you're thinking about cyber insurance, discuss with your insurance agent what policy would best fit your dealership needs.